Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hi, Dr. Mark Sims here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast, where we feature top leaders in healthcare. This episode is brought to you by Arizona Hearing Center. I help patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so they can connect better with their family and friends and remain independent. The reason I'm so passionate about helping patients is because I lost my brother Robbie twice. First from his hearing loss from radiation, to his brain tumor, and then again when he passed away. I only care for ears. I'm the ear of ENT, and I've performed over 10,000 surgeries over the past 20 years. I'm the founder of the Arizona Hearing Center. I'm also the author of Listen Up. Go to listenuphearing.com to learn more about the book, and go to azhear.com to contact us for any questions. Today, I have Dr. Art Mollen, who is a medical leader who lives in Arizona. He's the medical director of the Mollen Clinic and is a nationally recognized expert in health, fitness, and preventative medicine. He's a prolific author, including 5 bestsellers: Run for Your Life, The Mollen Method, Dr. Mollen's Anti-Aging Diet, Dr. Mollen's Anti-Aging Program, and Healthonomics, How to Balance Your Physical, Emotional, and Financial Checkbook. I'm privileged and excited to have him on Listen Up. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me, Mark.
Oh, I appreciate having you. So tell me a little bit about your path of becoming a physician. How did you end up becoming a physician?
Well, I was born, raised, educated in Philadelphia, and just came from a pretty middle-class environment, and just, always had a passion for medicine, and had great respect for the physicians that treated me when I was a young boy. So, and interestingly enough, I had a lot of, ear infections as a child, I might add.
Yeah.
And so I had a pediatrician way back in the dinosaur days, and he would come to the house and actually open up the inner eardrum and drain it, and
Lance your ear.
They kind of did that in the house. So that was in the wild west of Philadelphia.
Well, it's interesting. You might not know this, but I grew up in Philadelphia as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
And I was looking at your CV, and I did not, but my father was a physician and my mother was a nurse, and they both trained at Philadelphia General Hospital. So you have that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
Not that it's open anymore. It wasn't open when I went to medical school in Philadelphia, but
right. Oh.
My father described it as a great place to train. So you've written multiple books. I'm just kind of curious, like, how did you end up, like, your first book? What led you to write it? Like, why did you? I mean, not the topic. Like, what was the realization when you're like, wow, I should write a book about this?
Yeah. Well, I got very interested in running. I started running in my senior year of medical school, and I was very interested at that time in preventive medicine, and I just developed a real passion for running and continued running on a regular basis. And then, in fact, decided I was going to run the Boston Marathon. So
wow.
Ran the Boston Marathon. And then after that, I was even more enthused, and I joined what was called at that time the American Medical Joggers Association, and there were quite a few people there who were lecturers. One infamous lecturer was George Sheehan, who had written many books about it, and he lectured and spoke about it, and I saw the different aspects of running and learned a great deal. And so from that point on, I decided that I too wanted to craft a book, and about specifically running. So that was my first book, which was Run for Your Life, which was a double-day bestseller, and was kind of at the forefront of the running craze, which was published in 1978. And from that point, I continued on to start the Phoenix 10K, which back then was called the North Bank 10K. So that was kind of an evolution into running, and running being the first book that I had written, and talked about cardiovascular disease. And, when I was in medical school, I always was interested in preventive health. And, I saw a lot of physicians around me who didn't look particularly healthy. And
Yeah.
they, I thought they were very old at that time because they were like in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that seems very young.
Very young, right?
But, so back then, I started running my senior year in Philadelphia with snow on the ground, and then after that, when I graduated from medical school, I was drafted, and I was an active duty doctor in the Air Force and at Luke Air Force Base. So that's how I got to Arizona.
Yeah. So people tell me the sneakers were like Chuck Converse and Chuck Taylors and stuff at the very beginning. People had no running sneakers. Is that true?
Yeah, well, the Converse were something that I did run in the early days. And then my first Boston Marathon shoes were Pumas, which were extremely thin. In fact, I have them on a shelf behind me right now. But so it was kind of interesting, because I held on to those shoes and I show people those shoes. It's like, how did you run in them? And I said, well, they're actually better than the shoes that Abebe Bikila ran in the 1960 Rome Olympics, because he ran barefoot and won.
Right.
So yeah, I had shoes on in the Boston Marathon, but I can assure you I didn't win.
Yeah, well, it's still pretty impressive to finish. I've run one marathon in my life. It's a lot of work. It's wonderful to finish, but it is a great
feeling of accomplishment.
Yes, very much so. So, as you know, vaccines are very much in people's mind. Tell me the story of the Mollen Clinic and the Mollen Immunization Clinics in North America. Like, how did that all develop for you?
So back in the back in the 1980s, I would say probably 1988, 89, the Maricopa County Health Department came to me, and at that point I was writing a syndicated newspaper column. I was doing the television and radio shows, and so they said, do you have any ideas on how to promote flu shots in Arizona, because we're doing a study with Medicare to discern if free flu shots would lower the mortality and hospitalization among seniors. And I said, yeah, I have some ideas. Maybe we could do it in a grocery store, or we could do it in a shopping center. So I went to Eddie Basha at Basha's, and who I knew at the time, and said, do you think we could do some flu shots, and I'll have nurses and we'll do them in the store, and it'd be a great service in the spirit of public health. And he agreed and said, yeah. And I did that year about 15 clinics. And from that point on, Medicare then turned around. The study was, a success, and they were able to give free flu shots to seniors, because at that time, seniors had to pay like a $5 copay in order to get a flu shot. And the interest was very minimal. So the vaccines were being produced, and they actually were administering less than, say, 25% of seniors were actually getting flu immunizations each year. So the program kind of grew from there, and eventually I became the largest mass flu immunizer in the United States, and we did all the flu shots in all the Walmarts. So we did, and we would do clinics in the grocery stores, and we did them in Costco, we did them in Target. We did pretty much everyone. And so that was kind of the evolution of it. And I had the company for about 20 years and sold it to, venture capitalists, and they took it over. And Passport Health, one who was one of the buyers at that time, they still actually are in the immunization business. So they're the largest travel immunization company in America now, but and I still have an excellent relationship with them. And so this past year, in fact, because I thought we would wind up having a twindemic with COVID and influenza, I contacted the county health department and was able to convince them that they needed to plan for that. And we had a program with Pima County Health as well as Maricopa County Health Department, and immunized thousands of seniors this year with influenza. And we're in the midst of negotiating to do COVID immunizations as well.
That'd be great. I mean, as you know, people need access to it. How do you think
Yeah.
the immunization's going so far, based on your experience?
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah. I mean, the COVID immunizations here, as far as I'm concerned, are, way behind. We have immunized about 300,000 COVID immunizations at this time. We have 7.2 million people in Arizona. So we have a Herculean task ahead of us if we are planning to immunize everyone and get them to the point where we have herd immunity at 85 or 90%, which will occur whether people are immunized or whether they've developed a natural.
Whether or not they get it themselves, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking for. So yeah, so the COVID situation is not been well handled up to this point, and hopefully going forward it will be successful not only by the state of Arizona but by the country as well.
Yeah, no, hopefully the fall's a lot better than
this
last
and
fall.
hopefully we can get through all of this. Correct.
Yeah, I have I've gotten immunized, so I mean, obviously there's still things I have to be careful about, but I feel very lucky to have gotten my immunization already.
Yeah.
So
and I've been immunized myself. So
well, great. So I know you. I was looking. You had a TV show and a radio show. What's this? I mean, it's just I'm always fascinated. Like, what's the story? How'd you get into that? I mean, I know you wrote a book, but I'm more interested. Like, what's that story? Like, when that light bulb went off, or the day that it happened. How did that all happen? Because these are usually great folklore stories, if that makes sense.
So,
like the Eddie Basha story.
So the anti-aging book.
Yeah, well, you did a TV show, right? And you did a radio show. How did you get into those?
So the evolution for me, and again, it was perhaps more serendipitous than me actually having a lifelong plan to become a medical communicator and media person. So just as I was writing the book and running, and people were more interested in that, they wanted to have more information about it. So they basically contacted me and said, would you like to do a radio show? And that was KTAR, and that was back in the 1970s, and said, would you do a call-in radio show? And so I always liked the call-in type of show and handling questions from the listeners, and because then you can really respond much more extemporaneously, and you don't have to have a contrived message. Unfortunately, when you're doing TV, which I do now, a lot of times you don't really get more than a 5-minute period to present some type of diatribe on what you're trying to explain. So, it's a completely different format. Like doing a podcast, Mark, for you is a much better venue, I can tell you, than doing a 5-minute segment.
It's hard to boil it all down in 5 minutes, right? And get effective communication.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to explain some of the cases that you've seen over the years, I'm sure it would take you a lot more than just 5 minutes to even explain one case, let alone try to expand on, a multitude of different problems and other comorbidities that people have. So,
sure. Have you had any crazy stories on the air? Anything crazy happen when you're on the air? It's okay if it hasn't.
Yeah, in regard to the different shows that I've done.
Yeah, like people ask something weird or something strange happen. I mean, it just seems like it's conducive to some, like, the most memorable thing that ever happened type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people will always ask, the most bizarre questions, and sometimes if they're really a little bit off color, shall we say, I'll just say we're not taking psychiatric calls today.
Fair enough. Well, you have to figure out how to deal with that too.
yeah, that's my usual response. Like, they'll say something. I mean, years ago, Bill Close, who used to do Channel 10, he was a news anchor.
Yeah.
They said something about him, and which I won't even repeat, but and that's where I just kind of stepped in, and it's like, no, we're not taking those kind of calls today. So when you're doing that, you have to really be prepared, and you're taking live calls from people. I mean, the radio, of course, it's much easier to cut them off, but on TV, when you're taking live calls, which I had done for many, many years, now with COVID, because they, when I do my TV show on Sundays, they come to the house, so the photographer comes to the house and I just interact with the anchors live, but it's just the anchors. So we're not taking the calls that we normally would do. So it's a little bit,
a little more controlled.
It's a lot easier, a lot less stressful, a lot easier, and everything else. So, and the anchors at 3 TV, where I do my Sunday show, are so delightful to deal with. They're just a pleasure.
They're professionals.
Yeah.
So that's fun. Yeah. That's great.
So, and writing the column was great, and it was syndicated at one point in 100 newspapers. And
wow, that's great.
And so how I started with that, I actually I went to the managing editor of the Arizona Republic and just said, I want to write a column, and I've seen some of your medical, things, and I think I could contribute a lot more. And it was, again, during the running time. So it started with more of sports medicine, because being at the forefront of the sports medicine boom, I was able to, convince him to do that. So then I started writing for them. And then, one day, someone from the Des Moines Register showed up in my office and said, how would you like to write a syndicated column for us? We read one of your columns and we were interested. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So the next thing I knew, they syndicated, and it was in 100 papers. And I crafted that for about 30 years. And then the newspaper industry kind of
got replaced by
demise.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it was like everything was internet, and people hardly even read the Arizona Republic anymore, because it's all on the internet, and they're getting the news so much faster. So when you get a newspaper, you get it the next day. I mean, I still like to read the newspaper because the stories are, significantly more in depth.
Yeah.
But so that was the story there. And then after, when I got down to about 10 newspapers, it just wasn't worth it, because it was a lot of work. I was writing 3 columns a week for a long time. Yeah.
That's very disciplined. So, that's a lot.
And between doing that and practicing, and, and then, and then the evolution of my immunization program. So there was just a lot of balls in the air.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think people who are driven to change things usually have a lot of stuff going on. That's kind of one of the things that happens.
Yeah. And you're changing things. And if I might add, and, not to be patronizing in any way, but you have taken care of so many of my patients over the years, Mark, and have been such an incredible doctor for them, when they have had serious ear problems, that, that's really, you're truly an icon in Arizona in terms of what you do for patients.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that's, we do have merging paths, right? Because there's a large association of hearing loss with dementia and Alzheimer's. And so
yes,
one of the things I'll send you is a copy of my book. So I'd like you to take a look at it, but it's really about how hearing loss is poorly treated and how it could be better treated. And that's actually one of my movement is towards that preventative nature of treating hearing loss. So I'm a small part of the longevity of the, anti-aging longevity field.
Right.
Because it's multiple components, as you know.
It's all important when, they lose their hearing, and on top of the Alzheimer's and the Parkinson's and the other comorbidities. I mean, it's really difficult for these patients. I mean, as a clinician, I mean, I still practice and see patients, daily. So, it's pretty devastating, and just as devastating to the family. just as devastating.
Well, it's that loss of connectivity, right? That they
Yes,
become
right.
socially isolated. It's
Yeah.
terrible. So I mean, speaking of, the anti-aging field, like if you were to give people like, so it's interesting. I'm a surgeon, an ear doctor surgeon who's now kind of fallen into a fascination, or I want to learn more about the anti-aging thing. So if you were to give people like 5 takeaways or 3 takeaways, what would those be? I mean, what would be the top? I know like people always say, when they go to these conferences, some of my colleagues always say, well, make sure you floss, because there's like an association with flossing and heart disease. I wasn't aware of that, but maybe more, ones that seem a little bit more practical.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's so many different components in terms of anti-aging. If we're talking about, cosmetic anti-aging, I'd say, the first thing is stay out of the sun.
Right.
Stay out of the sun and wear sunscreen. In Arizona, and if let's say you're 50 years old right now, you need to stay out of the sun and wear sunscreen, or you're going to just destroy your skin and you're going to look 10 years older than you are by the time you reach the age of 60 or 70. So, from a cosmetic standpoint,
Sure.
try to maintain your weight, at the same weight you were, whether it was in high school or college, and try to keep that weight, at the same level. From a dietary standpoint, I haven't eaten red meat in 35, 40 years. So I eat chicken and fish. So I think eating less meat, and on that same token, eat less barbecued foods, because I believe that the nitrosamines are carcinogenic. And so you want to make sure you prevent, any colon cancer and anything like that. And mentioning that the age for colonoscopies has now been lowered to 45. It was 50. So the task force has recently come out with those guidelines. And if you have a family history of colon cancer, you need to look into that at 35 to start getting colonoscopies.
Yeah, I had mine at 45 because I have a family history, not at 35, but.
Right. And so the other thing is, if I had to say one key component to anti-aging, it's have a positive mental attitude.
Yeah.
Your attitude can make such a significant difference in terms of your overall health. And, everybody has stress in their life, and everybody can say, well, that's the reason I have this attitude. But you need to overcome that attitude and do whatever it takes. I think the one thing that allows you to have a more positive mental attitude is going to be exercise. And because it's going to increase beta endorphins in your brain, and you're going to feel better about yourself. And so, you may wake up, and on a scale of 1 to 10, you may feel like you're reaching up to touch bottom, but by the end of the day, if you exercise, you'll be able to function at the pinnacle of what your creativity is, and have more energy and function at a much higher level than someone else. So I think exercise is the key. When we talk about exercise, it's like, what are you going to do? Whatever you enjoy. You can walk, you can jog, you can bike, you can swim, you can do an aerobics class, jump up and down on a mini trampoline, do a Peloton, do a spin
Just
class,
get active,
whatever
right?
it is. But just some type of exercise. And you need to do, people always say, well, should I exercise every day? It's like, well, are you going to eat every day? Well, you're going to eat every day. So you're putting energy into the body. Why not expend energy out of the body? So yes, I think you should exercise every day. Plus it creates, that habit. And that's, as human beings, we form those habits. And if you can create that habit, again, at the younger you are, of course, the better off you're going to be, when you get to be old, So, so I think, you need to put that into your daily regimen. And would I suggest you try to do an hour a day? Yes, but a minimum of 30 minutes a day. And if you feel badly and you feel like, well, where can I start? 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day will be enough. If you do 10 minutes a day every day for 30 days, it's the minimal addictive dose of exercise. It's enough to get you feeling a little bit better. And if you do that for a period of 90 days and you stop with the exercise, you'll experience fatigue, a little anxiety, a little insomnia, similar symptoms if you were addicted to, a medication, an opioid or a
Withdrawal,
Xanax
right?
or anything like that. Speaking of which, I think you need to avoid all of those types of medications, any of the opioids, any of the Xanax, any of the sleeping pills. If you can avoid all those medications, you're going to be a lot better off going forward.
Yeah.
So minimize the amount of medications. And then from the dietary standpoint, and people, they often say, well, I want to lose weight. Well, my suggestion is eliminate the pasta, rice, potatoes, and bread. Those four are the killers of man. Pasta, rice, potatoes, and bread. So if you can you're not going to be able to eliminate them entirely. I love a good pizza once in a while,
Right.
But for most people, you can't eat pizza every day, and you want to try to, minimize those four foods particularly if you're trying to lose weight, and it will help to control your blood sugar. And I believe that, if you can keep your blood sugar low enough, that's potentially going to be one of the factors that will lower your risk of Alzheimer's, because I think that glucose metabolism in the brain is very closely linked to Alzheimer's. And everything I've studied, over the years, on Alzheimer and the diabetes, it just seems to be a real link between those two. So that's another reason to, control it. And of course, cardiovascular disease. You want to be fit,
Sure.
and you want to lower your risk of heart disease. Heart disease is still the number one cause of death in America, and, when I started out in medicine, Mark, it's crazy, but the normal cholesterol was 300. And
Wow.
I had, and you look at the lab report and it would say 300. And one of these lectures that I went to back in the 1970s was by a cardiologist who said, if you can lower your cholesterol at that time to 150 or less, you would be able to lower your risk of cardiac disease. And then the Framingham Heart Study came out and kind of corroborated that report, that if you were able to lower your cholesterol down to 150 or less. And so that should be your ideal cholesterol. Your ideal LDL should be less than 70. And your ideal hemoglobin A1C should, again, try to be lower than 5.6. So those are some, markers that, are good to look at, and, for most people going forward.
Well, you got to measure it to know how you're doing, right?
Yeah. So those are kind of my, my crystallized version, although I gave you a diatribe on it.
No, that's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's just, it's a positive mental attitude. It's exercise for 30 minutes a day, the diet, eliminate the pasta, rice, potatoes, and bread, and just try to, just lower the hemoglobin A1C and cholesterol levels, so.
That's great.
And then you'll live to be 100, hopefully.
Yeah, God willing, right? You'd be blessed to do that.
And function autonomously, because we
Correct.
want to all live to be 100, but we
want to have quality.
Quality of life is, as far as I'm concerned, more important than anything.
Agreed, 100%. So, who are some of the people in the longevity field that you respect, in the anti-aging field? Who are some of the people?
Well, I go back to Nathan Pritikin. Do you remember Pritikin?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that name?
Yep.
Nathan Pritikin. He had the Pritikin Clinic in Santa Barbara originally, and then he moved it to Santa Monica, and and he was a great believer in reducing certain foods that you're eating. I think Andy Weil has contributed a great deal down in Tucson. He's contributed a lot to that area. I don't know if I had to say I had any mentors, it would just be a conglomeration,
A lot of literature, a lot of different articles, right?
Yeah, of all the articles and everything, I can't say that there's, one individual that, I try to, follow over the years.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I mean, there's so much medical literature, and it's a kind of, you put it all together from various different places.
We're inundated today, especially with Google.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of giving people maybe those your 10 things or something like that. And what you've done is you've just boiled down a lot of knowledge, experience, and the literature to give it to people. I think that's great.
Yeah. So, I think, going forward, we need to get out of this pandemic stage and get to that herd immunity so that we can get back to a normal life. I don't believe that we'll be out of the mask stage of life probably for a year.
Right.
People will continue to wear masks, and hopefully, after that we'll be good to go,
Back to some, whatever the new normal is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not going to get too political here, but I'm happy with things the way they have evolved. I think it'll be beneficial for our environment, going forward, to have some transparency in, in what's going on with the COVID-19.
Sure. Well, I will say a tribute to science, how quickly this vaccine was able to be developed, and the mRNA vaccine is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are more coming online, guys.
Oh yeah. At the end of the day, follow the science. I'm kind of excited about the J&J vaccine because it's going to be one dose as opposed to 2 doses.
Right.
And so that should be good, and that should probably come out maybe in February or so. So
we might be seeing you guys involved in this rollout maybe later in the spring.
Yes. Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think so. We're talking to them now, so we'll see what they what their game plan is. I think going forward that the best thing for everyone out there is, even though I think that's a canine.
Yeah, that's all right. We all have them in our homes these days.
I think pets are healthy for people.
I was about to say, I think that's a longevity thing too. They bring a lot of pleasure. So.
Yeah, I think that's So, but I think if people want to try to stay as normal as possible during this whole pandemic, again, they should be doing some type of exercise, and that is basic, whether it's, again, going out for a walk every day and doing something. Many of my patients are coming in. It's like, oh, I gained weight because of the pandemic and I'm not going out. And it's like, well, you still could go out, that's why they call it the COVID-19, because there's about 19 pounds that are being packed on people. So,
we're also blessed in Arizona with the weather that enables you to be able to.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, if you were in Chicago right now or, or
upper Midwest,
Vermont or someplace it's so we are blessed to be here and we can go out and exercise every day. So I think that's really critically important, is for people to, to keep up their exercise routine, and for people that don't want to go out, you can get a stationary bike and they're not very expensive. You can buy them used, you can
get moving.
Probably get one for less than $100. So I think it's something, that people, could start doing. Yeah. And they need to get their regular checkups. People, I noticed during this particular time, they kind of slacked off. They didn't want to go to the doctor's office because of the potential of picking up COVID in the doctor's office and things like that. But, they still need to get their heart checked and their blood pressure checked and, get their cholesterol checked. I mean, if you don't take care of yourself, besides the COVID, there are other things that you're, going to, contract and that are going to cause illness. People have avoided emergency rooms because they were having chest pain and they wound up having, fatal coronary events. So
Yeah,
I
no.
think they have to be careful with that as well.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. And so hopefully people will, that is why we call them vitals, and you need your checks. So, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We've been talking to Dr. Art Mollen, who is the author, founder of the Mollen Clinic and a preventative medicine expert. Dr. Mollen, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, our phone number is 480-860-6455. So they can certainly call. Our offices are located at Tatum and Shea. It's 10214 Tatum Boulevard. And they can also get on to my email, and that's, through Channel 3, they can get on that. And that's the Dr. Art Mollen at gmail.com.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.